Okay. Hello. Okay. Hello everyone. Welcome to Hobbit's live stream today with topic TOEIC, TOEFL, IELTS from A to Z. Denny, our usual guest teacher, is still with us today, and perhaps you know Denny is American, an English teacher, also an IELTS examiner for 3 years. So he will give us many detail or point of view or any concern about IELTS or TOEFL or TOEIC. So if you have any question, issue, or concerns, please let us know by leaving the comment below. So hi, Denny. How are you?
I am alive. I am well, thank you. And how are
Yeah,
you doing this evening, Joy?
yeah, I'm doing great. I just come back from my hometown. I arrived just 1 hour ago. So okay, so moreover, we have another special one who is my co-host and possibly a host in future live stream, Miss Jenny. Hi, Jenny. Welcome to our live stream today. How are you?
Yeah, hello everyone. Hi guys. I'm good to see you on live stream today. Yeah, very happy, right?
Okay,
So
could you please introduce about yourself a little bit?
yeah, so I have to say hi again with everyone. Yeah, and I'm Jenny. Yeah, a little about myself. I'm working for the e-commerce company, and before I had that position in my company, I had to pass more than two English interviews to prepare for this. For our career, I think I and you and maybe many people spend a lot of time to join IELTS, TOEIC, the four class before. We are not really to choose which should study for certificate and in our English academy or just enough for daily conversation or for work. Yeah, so that I'm really excited about the topic today. And I also have many questions for Denny. Yeah.
Yes. So let's get started with first question from our new host today, Miss Jenny. Jenny, just go ahead with your question.
Okay, so Denny, the first question today is what is the difference between study IELTS, TOEIC, support, and learning English for general communication?
Good question, Jenny. So, when you're talking about these exams, what they are supposed to do is show that you have ability in certain parts of the language. And a lot of it is very simplistic use. By that, I mean you answer multiple choice questions, or you answer simple vocabulary questions, or fill in the blank to show that you have understanding from the reading of vocabulary, as an example. With the listening, similarly, you can learn methods to increase your score, at least some, without even really understanding what is being said. There are tricks and tips that you can follow to make your ability look better than it really is. And when you take these classes, that is what it is designed to do. It is made to help you earn a higher score or a higher band on the test. It doesn't mean that your actual ability, like you said, to communicate, your speaking ability. Well, for example, on the TOEIC and on the TOEFL, you listen to the question or you read the question and then you record an answer. That's not a conversation. That's not really communication. On the IELTS, for part 3 anyway, there can be a real conversation. Part 1 and part 2 is still certainly speaking, but it's still very controlled. For writing, well, most people in their day-to-day life don't write. And if they do write, it's one of two things. Either it's text messages or things on Facebook, social media, or it's business emails or reports. And IELTS writing doesn't do that. TOEIC writing doesn't do that. TOEFL writing doesn't do that. So if certainly if you are thinking about taking an exam preparation class, make sure that there is a reason, a good reason you're taking it. Maybe immigration, Australia, Canada, England, New Zealand. If you want to get a work visa or a residency visa or an immigrant visa, this can be useful to get that. If you're going to study in a foreign country, many universities require one of these tests. And some businesses, I am not sure about Vietnam, but I know in Japan, I know in South Korea, many businesses require students to take the, many companies require that their workers or that job applicants take these exams before applying, or if they want to get a higher job.
Yeah, so I think this big misunderstanding from in let's say in Vietnam, many people think that IELTS is the thing to evaluate the English ability of everyone. Like look at the score, look at the band score or something that we can see, we can think that this person is good or not good at English. So I think, yeah, the thing that you just point out that is really it's really the big problem in Vietnam now. Many people, try to learn IELTS with they just want to learn English, but they start with IELTS. So because of this, so many English center or English teacher open classes to teach IELTS these days. So this may confuse people make the decisions. So what would you looking for if you wanted to enroll a test preparation class, or if you were looking for a tutor to prepare you for a language exam?
Okay, good question. Yes. So especially if it is a language school advertising IELTS or TOEFL class, me as a student, I would say I want to take a mock, a practice interview, if it is the IELTS, and also do a practice task 1 and task 2. And I would want their teacher who is teaching the IELTS class to evaluate it and tell me, where am I strong? Where am I weak? And explain to me how the class will address the problems that I have. If it is the TOEFL, it would be similar in that I would still do the writings for it, and I would still practice recording the answers to the questions for the speaking, and then they would have one of their teachers read what I wrote and listen to what I said, and then again, tell me where am I strong and where I'm weak. With the writing and the listening, so listening and the reading. With the listening and the reading, there are different types of questions. So what I would expect is that they would give me maybe 3 different practice reading tests and 3 different practice listening tests. So they can do some analysis. Now, maybe my English is just bad in general. It doesn't matter what kind of question it is. I'm just bad. Okay, that's fine. But maybe I am good at multiple choice questions, but maybe I'm not good at giving a name to the paragraph. Or maybe I am good at scanning for some information, but I am not good at making a guess about the meaning of vocabulary. I should be practicing what I am weak at, not what I am strong at. Especially if it's tutoring, because if it's tutoring, the teacher can choose more directly what kind of questions you need to practice. So that's the problem. When you go to the classroom and you're put with a group of students, more than 5 or 6, then you get a general preparation class for the IELTS or a general preparation class for the TOEFL or the TOEIC, and it might not be suited to you. You already know, you already have the ability. You already have the ability that the teacher is focusing on this month. Maybe the next IELTS class next month will focus on what you are weak at. So before you take the class, try to get it as small as possible. Try to have it so that you are given a test when you enter the program that shows you where you are now and where you want to be. For example, on the IELTS, maybe you take the entrance test and they tell you, well, some good news, you're 5.5 band in speaking, but you're only 5 in writing. And you want to be 6 in speaking, and you want to be 6 in writing. So this is what we will study so that you can get there. Or this is the class you can take so that you can get there. If they tell this to you, if you can believe this, this is probably a good school or teacher. If they are going to put you in with 15 or 20 other students, and they're going to say, oh, here, look, we got this IELTS book, or we have this TOEFL book, maybe it will help you. Remember, well, what I saw in China in the year 2019, the IELTS exam was given 1 million times in China. 1 million. More than 50% of the candidates, the people who took the IELTS, they took it more than once. Some candidates might have taken the exam 3 or 4 times. Who benefits from this? Well, okay, maybe the British Council does, or IDP of Australia does, but also the language schools.
Yeah. Yeah, it's absolutely right. And so Denny is the tip of the first time that we choose to, go with this English center or this teacher. So how, if in, during learning, like let's say at first they do everything that you just give us the advice, but when we actually learning on there, so what is the wrong thing or the things that we have to aware that this English center will not lead to somewhere, or we don't need to waste time with this, even we pay money. What is the the hint that we recognize it?
Well, you need to remember what can be done and what cannot be done. For example, if your spoken grammar or your written grammar isn't very good, there's just no way around it. It's going to take time. It's going to take a lot of time and a lot of practice to get it done, to get it changed. And the language school at that point can only help you so much. They can't teach you tips. They can't teach you tricks. It's not like vocabulary, where maybe you can memorize 100 or 1,000 words in a week. There's just no way around it. When we're looking at vocabulary, so there's a small difference here. Now, they can focus on vocabulary for reading so that you can understand basically what it means. You didn't master the word. You can't use it, but you can read it and you can remember more or less what it means, so you can do the reading section. Okay, so you have to remember that your score might peak. It will go very high compared to what you can usually use, because after a week or two, you might forget it. If you study it thoroughly, including recordings and listening to it used in conversation, then that's listening too. Okay, now you are really starting to learn some of this vocabulary, and that's good. But remember, a lot of this that you are memorizing for the test, you're going to forget soon, And so, for example, if you take the IELTS test, you get your score, or the TOEFL, you get your score. Congratulations, you can go to Australia or Singapore or wherever to study. Your ability might drop down again before you get back there. So you need to keep it fresh. You need to keep reviewing that vocabulary. You'll still lose some of it, but you can hold on as much as possible and then later go above it. For pronunciation, if your pronunciation is hard to understand, again, this just comes to hard work and time. And there's not much the language schools can do about it. The trick that you might face is that two parts. For the IELTS and for the TOEFL, you don't need to have a native accent. That is not important at all. What is important is that your first language doesn't stop others from understanding you very well. I can listen to you and I can know you're from Vietnam or Italy or Brazil. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter at all. You can still earn a 9 in pronunciation on the IELTS speaking test. Pronunciation is one of the 4 parts we measure. So what you need to worry about is that the teacher that they have teaching you is a good model for pronunciation. And that can be hard for you to know independently. And for fluency, again, there's not much the school can do for you other than do drills, to be honest with you, having you practice speaking answers to questions that are similar to what will be on the test. Right? The more you hear the questions, the more you practice using the vocabulary, generally, the faster you will be in the test speaking. And hopefully your fluency will be better. Because first, your brain goes faster to answer the question. But second, your listening is better. The vocabulary used to talk about those topics, your brain recognizes it faster. The faster your brain recognizes it, the quicker you can make your answer. So these are different things you need to remember about what the language school can and cannot do for you.
Yes. So thank you, Denny. Jenny. So yeah.
So like Denny said, we have to choose the school or the teacher for us to make the IELTS or TOEIC. So I think maybe the score of the teachers is important. Like we need to care about it or not.
Okay, so to let you know, and you can find this on the British Council website, Australia, IDP Australia, and I guess even the University of Cambridge. To be an IELTS examiner, you don't need to actually be a band 9 in everything. Only 8.5. I don't know. I don't know how often that happens. What I can tell you is working in China, I had plenty of coworkers who were not native speakers of English, certainly. So having people who didn't earn a perfect on the IELTS, first I should say, even if somebody is perfect on the IELTS or TOEFL, first, that doesn't mean that they are good at teaching English. Okay, that's something completely different. All right, that is something completely different. But even if the teacher or teachers are at band 9, it doesn't mean that they know why. It doesn't mean that they know why that they are at band 9. All they know is that they can perform at that level. Now, for example, let's say that you need to get a band 7 on IELTS or you need to score maybe 105 or 110 on the TOEFL. Well, then if it's band 7, you don't want a teacher who's band 7.5. You probably don't want a teacher who's band 8. You probably want 8.5 or 9, almost perfect, because they need to be speaking to you. They need to be writing or whatever they are tutoring you in, whichever of the 4 tests. They need to be almost perfect at it, because 7 is pretty good. Let's be clear. For the IELTS, a 7.5 is the average native user. Not 9, 7.5. So if you can earn a 7, or if you need a 7 or 7.5, that's good. All right, that is a very high quality level of English. Then you're going to want your teacher perfect or almost in that test. If you're looking for 6 or 6.5, okay. Then you could have a teacher who's 7.5. If you're looking for 5.5, all right, then 7 should probably be good enough. What I will warn you, however, if you enter a study program and the minimum requirement is 5.5, and it is university level English, you will struggle. Okay, I want to let you know right now, you will struggle, you might fail. I taught university foundation year students. Foundation year is the year where students take a lot of English lessons, maybe 15 or 20 hours a week, and they take maybe 1 or 2 other classes, mathematics, business, literature, something like this. But all of their classes there will be in English, like RMIT, Royal Melbourne Institute of Technology in Hanoi, or Saigon, or in Da Nang. I worked for them in Hanoi. Also, I worked for a foundation program in China for 1.5 years, and it was the same thing. I saw a lot of students who entered at 5 or 5.5. And it took them a year or 1.5 years to get their English really able to study there, to study in English, from the textbooks in English. So these are things you need to remember.
So Jenny, do you have anything or any issue or concern? Continue to ask Denny. Follow this.
So John, we can move to the next question for Denny.
Yeah. Okay. So you mean me, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So Denny, the question I just asked, I just mentioned you before about how we can choose the place to prepare the test, right? So it's related to the tuition. So it's quite costly for students, right? For especially IELTS, it's not cheap at all. Therefore, you have any advice or tip for us to save money? Do you have any So like you say, as much as possible, the tuition that we have to pay for do the test, because we don't have the good enough result and the acceptable result that we expect.
Okay, good question. So before all of this, perhaps what you should do is you should take a practice test, all 4 parts. For the IELTS or the TOEFL, for the IELTS or the TOEFL or the TOEIC, whichever 2 parts you're doing. And there are many websites where you can find this, and there are some websites that will also tell you how good your score is for free. And then you need to look at, all right, for example, if it's the IELTS, you can see, I need to get a 6 in reading, but on this test, I already have a 7. Well, what I would suggest you do to make sure is you take several reading tests, but then you see, okay, it's a 7. I don't need to worry about it. I'm not going to worry about it. Same for the listening test. Same thing. If the listening, you need a 6 and you're a full band, okay, so you're a full band at 7 consistently, then you probably don't need to worry. And then you need to look at, all right, where is my speaking? Where is my writing? There are thousands of videos on YouTube and maybe the Vietnamese equivalent platforms. You can find websites that tell you what kind of vocabulary to use for task 1, for describing graphs or charts or this or that. And to that extent, it's useful. All right. It's useful. You can teach yourself. You can practice by yourself with these questions. The problem is to get feedback. You might memorize and you might come to understand all of this vocabulary. And so you can do the reading test. All right. And you can do the listening. But you don't know very well how you use this when speaking. Or when do you use this word for writing, but a different word for speaking? Or we do use it for writing, but we use it in a different situation for a different reason. That you need feedback for. And here's where you definitely need a teacher, at least to let you know, oh, no. This is not how you write the introduction to part 2. Or wait. You meant to say it's raining cats and dogs, not that it's raining rats and cows. Or you use this expression wrong. You need that feedback. So you have to be aware. There are things where you definitely do need a teacher. Again, some things you can learn by yourself, especially if you are at a middle level or higher. You can take grammar tests online and you can see where your grammar is. And if you are middle level or higher, you can look for resources. You can look for videos on YouTube that explains, when do you use this kind of grammar? When do you use that tense? And so on. And you can find things to practice with, and that's good. All right. And that's all fine. But again, like with vocabulary, you're still going to need feedback. With fluency, with pronunciation, you're going to need feedback. There's just no way around this. So you're going to need to spend money at least for this, if not teaching. If you're lower ability, you're going to need all the help you can get, probably. Another thing to consider, like I mentioned earlier, maybe, for example, you are bad at multiple choice and questions for the reading test or for the listening test or a certain kind of question. You can focus and you can find tips on that kind of question. Maybe your problem is not English. Maybe your problem is that you don't have test-taking skills. If you're good at English, but you have weak test-taking skills, again, you can find videos, you can find books to help you practice, and that could be a way to save money also.
Yeah. So I did, the thing that I do with my friends every morning to learning, listening test of IELTS. And I figure out that, in YouTube, they update every newest test, listening test on YouTube. Yes. And we can come there and to check today the test. Was it a test for listening for today and without any fee, right? And with speaking, I have the tips like when I will listen some video in YouTube but I just listen the question. And so they will have some kind of video like with band 7 or band 8 answer speaking test. So I will listen to the question and I will answer myself first. After that, I will listen to the people in this video who do the test, and I compare how I can use like them or something like that. I think if we really want to learn and desire to do the test, the English center or teacher is not enough, right? We have to learn, and a lot of things can happen to save money.
Yes, you need to be actively practicing.
Yes.
And for example, if you're worried about speaking with your friends, maybe your friends are also studying English and they are also a similar level to you. You don't need to worry too much in general speaking and making grammar mistakes.
Yeah.
It is too small a sample. It will not have a big enough influence on you that it would change the grammar portion of your speaking test on the IELTS or the writing portion. It won't. You don't need to worry about making mistakes. It is better to practice that to get better at fluency. It could be dangerous for pronunciation because maybe you are pronouncing a sound better than your friend, but then you think maybe they're right, I'm wrong. And so you start changing it to how they say it.
Yeah.
So you got to be careful about that. Yeah.
Yes.
But in general, it'll help fluency. And by doing that, you can listen to the vocabulary that your partner is using and you can check it. And maybe you've learned a new word, or you can find out that maybe you're making a mistake or that they're making a mistake. So that's useful.
Yeah.
Yeah, but Joy and Denny, like you say, you have lots of things you can practice or self-study or prepare for IELTS. But a lot of people now, they want to get the high score as soon as possible. So a lot of people, they try to find some video with the tips. And we also have the question from Ngọc Hà in the comment. She have the question like, what do you think, Danny, about the opinion that many students get high score in IELTS tests due to using a good tips, but in fact, their knowledge in language is lower? Yeah, it's happen in Vietnam, a lot of case like that.
Okay, so that's a good question from our audience. So as I mentioned before, maybe you earn a high score, but then when you go to actually study, you find out that your ability isn't good enough. I taught at RMIT. I also taught for Liverpool University in China. And I also taught at a small liberal arts college in America and another college in Oman. And there's a difference between academic English and the English you show on the academic test for the IELTS or for the TOEFL. Those essays or your writings is very short. You're going to have to write maybe 1,000, 2,000, maybe more word essay or business reports, depending on what you study. At least on the IELTS, you do actually talk to somebody live. Now, because of the coronavirus, maybe you will do it over video, but there will be somebody actively asking you questions over the internet, or it's really face-to-face. Whereas on the TOEFL, yeah, you talk into a machine or into a microphone and it's listened to somebody later. But these aren't real conversations. And so you're going to have to give presentations probably in that country. And even forget presentations. You know, once you leave Vietnam and you arrive in Australia or whatever country, at the airport, everything's in English. And if you can't communicate very well, okay, you can use your cell phone, you can use a translator. Great. You can get to the dormitory. You can get to your apartment that you've already prepared through a friend or something like this. How are you going to get by? It's not like there's a quick mart everywhere where you can go buy some pho. You're going to have to figure it out. And so you're going to struggle in your university classes a lot. And again, you might fail. All right. You might do really bad the first semester or the first year. But how are you going to practically live? It will be challenging, especially if you want comfort. One thing I noticed is that a lot of universities, maybe they will set the IELTS score or the TOEFL score a little low so that you get the score, they can give you the visa. But then when you get to the university, they say, now we want you to take our English test. Yes, you already passed the IELTS, you already passed the TOEFL, but now take our test. And then you take the test. And guess what? You didn't pass because it's a lot harder than the IELTS or the TOEFL. Maybe it is real academic English. And you go, And the school says, oh, don't worry. We have a special school for you. Okay, it's a little expensive. Yeah, you'll have to stay at the dormitory at the school. That's expensive too. You're going to have to buy food, but don't worry. The school's got a cafeteria. And after just 3 months, 4 months, 6 months, you can enter as the normal student.
And spend a lot of money?
I cannot talk about Australia, but there are some American universities that maybe for this extra 3-month or 4-month English course altogether, you might pay an extra $5,000 or $10,000 for tuition, housing, food, all of it together.
It's a lot.
Yes, that's why you need to understand there's a difference between academic English and IELTS English or TOEFL English.
Yeah, so we shouldn't feel happy when your school require low IELTS score, because maybe when you get there, you have to pay a lot of money, even more than you pay for learn IELTS for higher score, right? And this how school take the money from students who learn abroad. Yeah, it's a good idea, right? It's a good,
it's a nice way to get rich.
So it's a new information. Sometimes I just doubt about why the IELTS the score that they require is not high as I think. But now you point it out. So it's the reason why I think someone who learn IELTS or learn the test and think that is the all, right? Is the on of the ability that we have, and the score reflect our skill in English. So we confident about this result, and we go out, and this test, this IELTS score become nonsense, right? It's become nothing.
Yes.
Denny, so how we can learn, let's say I am student who want to learn abroad, for this kind of university that you just mentioned, that they require low score in IELTS, right? And how I can learn, I learn IELTS test, but beside of that, I can actually learn to improve my skill. It's not for just only for the score, but I can improve myself, improve the English skill. Beside that, it's I don't get to the trap of the school. Is it something like this?
Well, so again, this gets to be challenging because you need feedback and you need teachers who teach real academic English, no longer test preparation. And you have to be clear on that. Because writing a research essay is, like I said, maybe a couple thousand words, or writing a business report could be a couple thousand words, and there's a process to it. Now, if you're going into business school, usually they will teach you in the first classes how to do that. So you don't need to worry so much if you are an undergraduate student who's going to study business. Now, if you're an MBA student, all right, Masters of Business Administration, you already need to know how to do it. And you need to know how to do it in English, not your native language. Then you really need to find them. If you're going to study chemistry, if you're going to study history, psychology, something like this, you need to know how to write a research paper. There are some language schools that teach this. For this part, I cannot recommend any schools in Vietnam because I honestly don't know. I don't know which schools do and do not in Vietnam. The language school that I am familiar with most is a language school called ELS. And they are in America, in Canada, and they have a few places in Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and one in Shanghai. I don't think anybody listening would go to them, but you can look on their website and you can see their different levels of classes and what they teach at those levels. And that will give you an idea about what you should be looking for if you need to study academic writing. Academic presentations. So with academic presentations, that is something that you can watch people give demonstrations of, and you can learn some things about public speaking. There is an organization called Toastmasters. TOASTMASTERS. They are an international public speaking organization, and they have small communities in many cities all over the world. It started in America, but they are all over the world. And they are also certainly in Vietnam. Because of the coronavirus, they now have sessions online sometimes. And so what you should do, if you're interested in this, is search for them. Do a search on Google or other search engines and look in Saigon or Hanoi or larger Vietnamese cities. And they will probably be there. And like I said, they also do things online because of the coronavirus. So you can take some training from them and they can give you some advice about how to hold your body, what kind of language you should use, things like this. This could help you to prepare for when you get there for real, actual study.
Yeah, so with IELTS, to talk about the test, Denny, so what should students be concerned about before the test? That make sure that we will have the, the best result that we can get. Like it's of course it's based on our ability. We cannot get something higher in our ability, but with lack preparation or something that's make we can get the result in lower than our ability because of some mistake or something like this, right? So how we can prepare this before the test?
Good question. All right. So for the listening test and for the reading test, as I mentioned before, you can find free practice tests. Get familiar with the instructions. Get familiar with the different kind of questions so that you don't spend time reading the instructions and maybe misunderstanding the instructions. On the IELTS listening and on the IELTS reading, sometimes it says very clearly, use no more than 3 words. Okay, guess what? It doesn't mean 4, it doesn't mean 5, it means 3. It doesn't matter how beautiful your answer is. It doesn't matter how correct it is. If it's more than 3 words, it's immediately wrong. So you should already know the instructions so you spend less time on that. Be familiar with the kind of questions so that you can decide, all right, for this kind of question, I don't need to do a deep reading. I only need to skim, or I only need to scan. Save yourself time wisely. Save yourself time wisely. Also, on the reading tests, for example, if you need a 6 or a 6.5, you don't need an 8, you don't need a 9, 6, 6.5. And you already know what kind of questions you are good at. Do those kind of questions first. Get a perfect or almost perfect on the questions that are the easiest for you. Do them immediately. Maybe you will run out of time. You don't know. So do the easiest questions for you first. If you need an 8, well, okay, bad news. You're going to have to do very well on all of the questions, and you're going to need to do all of the questions. So you need to remember what your goal is. For the writing, there are many, many practice material on the internet. There are videos that go over the kind of vocabulary that you should use when you describe a map, when you explain a procedure or process for task 1, or you describe a pie chart or a line graph or this or that. You should already be familiar with this vocabulary because you have the choice to be. There's no surprises here. The vocabulary used to describe if the amount of pollution is going up, is it skyrocketing? Is it going up just a little bit? Is it declining? This is all vocabulary you can practice and use before you go in there. Maybe you can't help your grammar very much, but for part 1, you can help yourself. For task 2, for the writing, here, the questions, there is, because of the way that IELTS now is, you can't really find out what the question is as it's being given. So you can find a little bit afterwards, right? After somebody takes the test, they can go on the internet and then they can type in the question. And then you can believe them or you could not believe them. Maybe they're wrong. What you can do is you can look up the history of questions and find topics and prepare the vocabulary for it. So at least you have some basic vocabulary for it. And, maybe that will help you to get a 6. Maybe your vocabulary isn't very good, so it's really more like a 5, but maybe you could get a 6. For the speaking test, okay. So with the speaking test, now I'm going to talk about things that is clearly known. This is public information. There are different sets of questions always in circulation. And so what this means to you as a candidate is that for the first part, for part 1 of the speaking test, the examiners can pick from up to 30 different groups of questions. All right, now, and so you have no idea which groups the examiner is going to choose from. Don't waste your time trying to memorize questions or answers. Because first, the questions you see on the internet, again, maybe the person got it right, maybe they got it wrong. And if you give a memorized answer, the examiner, if they have enough experience, they will know. Okay? I've had candidates who never looked at me for all of the 14 minutes of the interview. You can do that if you're nervous, if it will make you feel relaxed or calm to not look at the examiner in the face, you're allowed to do that and it will not hurt you. Okay? It won't. It's strange, but you can do it. I have had candidates who always talked like this. They did not speed up. They did not slow down. Relax, calm down. We are not your enemy, okay? When you go in for the speaking test, we want you to perform to the best of your ability. We don't want you to earn a high mark. We don't want you to earn a low mark. We want you to show the right mark for you. That is what we want. So what does that mean for the IELTS speaking? All right. So if you do it face-to-face, they will introduce you into the room. They will tell you this test will be recorded. Okay. And then they will say something, and then you'll get into it. They will ask you a couple of questions about, do you work or are you a student? Or they will ask you questions about where you live, usually something like this. And then about 2 other topics. And you should know this. The questions will go from easy to hard in terms of vocabulary and grammar. You want to take a couple of seconds to think about what you're going to say? All right. Don't rush it. You don't need to start speaking immediately. You want to take a moment? Okay. You think you've made a grammar mistake and you correct yourself. Okay, that's fine. You're not sure about the pronunciation? Don't let it stop you. I had a candidate who wouldn't stop shaking for the whole test. Unfortunately, his vocabulary was good. His grammar wasn't bad, but his fluency, I had a hard time to understand him because he kept starting and stopping. And so, before you go in, close your eyes, breathe in, breathe out. In part two, you get 1 minute to prepare an answer. Now, you get a board where you get something to write on. You can write anything you want. Don't worry. I don't care what you write on the board. You can draw pictures. You can write in your native language, in English. You could draw the Mona Lisa. Whatever you want to do so that it helps you to remember what you want to say. And you can read from the board if you want. In part 2, you don't want to look at me. You want to look at your notes the whole time. You can do that. All right. Doesn't matter. Whatever you want to write on the board to help you. You want to remember some grammar, vocabulary. Another thing, sometimes when you're looking at the examiner, maybe you see that the examiner is looking at a clock or the examiner is writing something on a board. Maybe you see, oh no, the examiner wrote the number 6. Oh no, the examiner wrote the number 2. Oh no, I'm terrible at English. Well, maybe, but that's not what the 2 means. And it's not what the 6 means. The examiner needs to be worried about the clock. The examiner needs to be worried about the time and many other things. So the numbers that the examiner is writing is not your score. It's other things the examiner needs to pay attention to or remember. Just focus on your answer. Just focus on your answer. Be familiar with the topics. with part 2 and part 3, again, you can find the questions on the internet. And well, for part 2, you can. Remember, in part 2, it's directly from the book. And so again, you can have some preparation, and you can find internet pages that keeps a collection of all of the questions used over the last 15 years. Yes, it is worth your time to make sure you have some basic vocabulary about all of those topics. That is a good use of your time, not memorizing. Part 3, look, even if you have part 2 exactly right, part 3, it's a real conversation. And you really don't know what the examiner is going to ask. All right. It's the same part 2 question, but me as just one examiner out of 400 in China. All right. And I will ask that same part 2 question to another candidate the next day. In part 3, I'll have different questions for that candidate than the one I had today. So the questions that you see for part 3 on the internet, don't memorize answers. That's useless. Again, maybe find some useful vocabulary about that topic. And that would be the extent of it. Now, on the day of the test, when you go to the speaking test, if you do it face-to-face, take your ID, take the keys to your motorbike or your wallet if you're going to take the bus. Leave everything else at home, really. Okay? Leave as much as you can home so that you don't worry about it. Because when you get to the test center, if it's a very busy test center, you'll have to have this picture taken. You'll have to go over there. Maybe they will take a digital scan of your thumbprint to make sure they know who you are. And then they will say, oh, you need to put your phone here, your purse there, your jacket here. The fewer things you have, the easier it'll be. And the less likely you will forget your phone, that you will forget your purse at the test center. You'll be very unhappy if you go 30 minutes and then you realize, I forgot my phone. So these are ways that you can be relaxed on the day of the test. Be prepared. Find out as much as you can about all parts of the test. Find out the vocabulary that you need for task 1 on the IELTS for academic. For part 2, you can get an idea and have some vocabulary for each of the topics. You're choosing to not do it. Don't choose to not prepare.
Yes, so like based on my experience when I did the speaking test interview before, the examiner, my teacher always says like my vocabulary may not good, I made some mistake grammar, but my fluency is always good because of I always tell the truth. I didn't memorize anything. I just say about my experience, the truth that I think, and because of this, I didn't forget anything, because maybe I have some difficult to explain my idea, but I have it already. I didn't try to memorize it. I just try to, to explain it, to clear it for the examiner. So like when I cannot use this vocabulary, I will change to another vocabulary to explain my idea. It's the reason why I can constantly talk. I'm not stopped to thinking or to memorize anything. And I think it's not for IELTS test, but for the interview for the job. In reality, it's also like because you tell your experience, you're truly thinking, and it's because of this, you are really confident and you can make the eye contact or you feel relaxed because of you didn't afraid that someone can that think that you tell a lie, or you try to you think that you remember it wrong, or it's just some tip that I did when I do some interview and make me always like teacher always says, oh Joy, your pronunciation, you have to get it better. Your vocabulary is okay, but you make a lot of mistake on grammar. But your fluency, you always talk. You didn't interrupt to thinking. Like it's just something like that. And I always told them, because teacher, because I always tell the truth. I don't have to interrupt to thinking. It's just like it's something that I think is a good tip for anyone to when we didn't tell the truth or prepare it, we feel really nervous and we forget all the things that we memorize, or the thing that we try to get it before. You learn from someone that if you see the question, just answer like this, answer like that, right? So Danny, I have the questions that the things that make I and Jenny a little confused when we learn IELTS test. Like we have two teacher and one teacher remind us, if you listen the question and go directly to answer the question, and the another teacher told us that you shouldn't go to direct to answer the question, but you should go around to make your to show your fluently or your vocabulary first before you go directly to the main idea of the question. So what do you think about this?
Okay, so as I mentioned before, there are 3 parts to the speaking test. And what I do as an examiner is different in each part. In part 1, I ask you directly questions from the book. I cannot change the wording of the question. However, I can repeat the question 1 time. Now, if you are answering part 1 question and the examiner interrupts you to repeat the question, this means the examiner believes you are not answering the question, that you are off topic. And so the examiner is giving you an opportunity to listen again to the question and change your answer. You should listen carefully to how the examiner says the question again, because maybe the question was, as an example, did you like going to libraries? And then you say, I go to libraries every day. I like to find books there. Right. But my question was, did, past tense. So maybe when I'm asking the question, when I'm repeating it, I will put emphasis on the word did, because you got the wrong tense. Or maybe I said, did you like going to libraries? And you say, oh, I enjoyed going to cafes. Okay. So I said, did you like going to libraries? I tried to put emphasis on the part you missed. I'm trying to help you. I have had candidates who would say to me, as I was saying, look, maybe you think you are answering the question. And maybe you are. And maybe your examiner is not good at English. Maybe. Okay, maybe. But it doesn't matter, because in the end, it is the examiner who decides your score. So if the examiner repeats the question, change it. So to answer your question, you need to show quickly that you're on topic. All right. You don't need to answer directly, but you need to clearly show to me that you know what you're talking about in part 1, or I will repeat the question. And if I've repeated the question once to you and you still don't seem to understand it, I will go on to the next question. In part 2, Look, the 2 minutes are yours. I will not say anything unless something really strange happens. You get up to 2 minutes to talk all you want. If you stop before that, then I might ask you if you have anything else to say, or if you could add more information, if I don't think you've said enough. But if you've already spoken for maybe a minute and 40 seconds or a minute and 30 seconds, and you answered very well or enough, then we will go on. In part three, you need to remember, if I ask you a question and you don't understand it, you can paraphrase it and say, do you mean ... Or you could say, what do you mean? So if I start to interrupt you because I don't think you're going fast enough, you will see the context. All right, so you don't need to worry so much. What you should do is, in whatever way you naturally feel comfortable. If you are somebody who likes to give long-winded answers, go for it. In part one, if I need you to go faster, I will interrupt you and go to the next question. All right, that's my problem, not yours. If they repeat the question, probably speed it up. Okay, get to the point faster in part one. In part three, there's a lot more time. All right, there's a lot more time, so you don't need to worry about it too much.
So Jenny, do you have something to ask Danny, or I will keep him for my concerns?
Yeah, but Denny, because I do a demo test for IELTS test before on speaking. Like sometimes we have the question like you really don't like to answer. And I saw some video on YouTube. Some people they answer this like, oh, I don't like this answer, and they dot they answer something is make the question is go far away. It's really different. There's a good way to deal with this, or we have a good way, a better way to can change if you don't want to answer this.
Okay, so this goes for IELTS both for speaking and for writing. Maybe you've never had an experience, or maybe you don't know something related to it. Lie. Okay, look, I don't care. What I am supposed to do is evaluate how well you can communicate in English. I'm not supposed to evaluate. For example, if in part two, you are asked, tell me about a time when you went to a famous place. And so in part two, you tell me about a time that you went to the Eiffel Tower in Paris. Did you really go to the Eiffel Tower? No. And maybe I even know you didn't, but I don't care. What I care about is this really the answer that you make, or is this a memorized answer? One more thing I want to say about memorized answers. So in China, they have an app, Da Suge, Big Brother. And people would put in answers, the questions and answers. And so, for example, there might be 20. At any time, there are 20 different, 20? No. Oh my, maybe like 40 different part two questions. So what somebody would do is they would make an answer, a memorized answer for part two that answered like 6 or 7 questions. So this goes to what you were asking about. They don't really want to answer the question, so they only sort of answer it. That will make me think you are giving me a memorized answer. All right, okay, you use some vocabulary that is connected to it, but a lot of the vocabulary is not. So you're not going to get a very high score for vocabulary. and for fluency. So IELTS is schizophrenic. From band 1 to band 7 for fluency, it looks more at how well you connect your speaking. Only band 7, 8, and 9 does it look at how well you connect your ideas and how well are your ideas on topic. You could be saying completely insane things to me and still get a 7 in fluency. You're not going to get higher. And I will think maybe you should be put into a special hospital. You can scare me, but you can still get the 7. So if you need more than 7, you really need to be on topic. And it's going to hurt your vocabulary if you go too far away from topic. And again, if I think it's memorized, it doesn't help you and it doesn't hurt you. I ignore it. And the problem is, if you look at the descriptions, the band descriptions for 9, 8, and 7, it talks about how big your range is, how big your variety is of vocabulary, of grammar. So if I think your part 2 is memorized, then I can only listen to your variety in part 1 and part 3. That's not good. You won't get a 9. Definitely not a 9, definitely not an 8. Maybe a 7, but your vocabulary would have to be very good. And so would your grammar, because I need more evidence. I need more from you to know where you are.
Yes, so Denny, so with some question that we have no idea about it, like we totally not understanding what the examiner says, but what do we can do a little bit to, a higher score that for nothing?
Okay, so if it's the speaking test, as I told you, the examiner can repeat the question 1 time. If there is a word you don't understand in the question, don't say, I don't understand. I cannot help you. I don't know what your problem is. If you say, what does ... mean? Now, I know this might be the first time for you to hear this new word. So you have to try. If I can guess which word you mean, then I must give you a definition, an easier definition, so that you can at least try to answer it. In part 2, in part 2, at least before the coronavirus or when it was face-to-face, the examiner would put a piece of paper or a book in front of you and also point to the question. And the examiner would also say the question to you. If you don't understand the question, all right, when I say it to you, stop immediately and say, what does ... mean? You do it before I put the book down, because I will have to tell you the meaning of the word before your preparation time begins. If I already put the book down, you can still ask me for the meaning of the word, and you lose preparation time, but I will give you the definition. So that's what you can do in parts 1 and 2. In part 3, again, you can tell the examiner that you don't understand the question. That's fine, and it doesn't hurt your mark. All right, it won't hurt you at all. And I will try to explain it in other words, or I will paraphrase it. And if you still don't understand it, I will just go on to the next question. All right. And don't worry about it. Okay. Because that last part, those 4 to 5 minutes of interview is going to go by really quickly.
Yeah.
You will be surprised. Yeah. Just let it go. Don't focus on it. Listen to the next question. For writing, All right. Yeah. Task two essay. There's not much you can do about it, to be honest with you. You might be asked a question that you've really never thought about before. I'm sorry. That's really just how it is. And I saw this a lot as an examiner in China, where the candidate, sometimes they showed they understood the question, often, but they really didn't have much to say about it. And unfortunately, there's not much you can do about it. Just try to answer the question to the best of your ability. And maybe understand that on the writing, you're not going to earn much more than if your grammar is good. All right. So if your grammar is good and you can connect your ideas well, maybe you could still get a 5.5 or a 6 because you don't have enough development. You don't have enough development and you don't use enough good vocabulary on the topic. But you can still have good grammar and you can still connect your ideas well. And that's why I said you should look to websites that tell you common topics. So you practice vocabulary and just practice the questions. I saw so many questions, I couldn't tell you if there were questions that were actually repeated. Well, no questions were repeated. No writing questions have ever been repeated. All right, it's used and then it's gone. Maybe there are similar questions. I don't know. But there's certainly similar topics. All right, and that you can prepare for. And in the test, if you don't have it, don't kill yourself over it.
Yes, Denny. So with let's say IELTS test, we have 4 skill, right? But listening and reading, we all have the exactly answer, and nothing can change about this. But with speaking and writing, so examiner is people, a human, right? So sometimes,
Yes.
yeah.
Emotional.
I continue, Joy. I think I know where this is going. Yes.
Yeah. So it depend on, sometimes it depend on the how nice the examiner is, or it's on depend on the system to evaluate.
Okay. So candidates, if they believe that they were treated unfairly for the written test or for the speaking test, you can pay money to have it rechecked. That's one of the reasons why all speaking tests are recorded, is so that it can be double checked. While I will not discuss or talk about the training of examiners, how the process is, what I will tell you is that my training is very rigorous, and so is another examiner's training. And so, for example, in the same interview, maybe I think Jenny is 5, and as an example, okay, only as an example. And this examiner thinks Jenny is 5.5. And there's a half a band difference. Maybe 1 full band, maybe, but usually half a band difference. So we are trained very well, okay? We are trained very well. And every test session, a percent of what I score for writing or for speaking is scored independently, double checked by another examiner. Maybe in China, maybe in England, maybe I don't know where in the world. So there is a high level of accuracy, so of consistency and precision. So I think something like between 5 and 10% do they say, oh, we made a mistake, and they give you a higher score. I should also add, sometimes they find out that the examiner gave you too high a score. Now, when that happens, they don't bring it down, but they also don't tell you. So it is possible that you get a higher score than you should have. All right, that happens. That does happen. So, but if you have reason to believe, if you have real reason to believe that you were treated unfairly, that you believe an examiner was rude to you, or that they spoke too quickly, or something, they can listen. They can listen to the recording. And if it is special, maybe there's also video, if it is face-to-face. Obviously, if it's over the internet, then there's video. Everything is clear. And they will really look at it, because what I will say, the British Council does try to have a good product and service. It does really try to do that. Sometimes examiners make mistakes, right? They weren't rude or mean. They just didn't do their job well. That can happen. Interviews. So I don't know how busy it is in Vietnam. In China, before the coronavirus, I might do 20 or 21 interviews in a day. And I might do that for 5 days. Now, some suggestions here. Don't be the last interview on a Friday. I want to go home. I'm tired. So maybe that means I'm not as focused. And so maybe you'll get a higher mark, but also you might get a lower mark. Usually, don't be one of the first candidates. Usually don't be the first or second. Maybe I'm still waking up. I'm going to be focusing better. If you're going to do it after lunch, be one of the first people after lunch. 1 o'clock, 1:10, 1:30, 1:50, something like this. Don't go too late again, because again, maybe I'm getting tired. And sometimes you just don't know. If I have a candidate who's band 3 for speaking, I've got a headache. All right, I have a headache. Then I have another candidate, band 3. Oh boy. Another candidate, band 3. And then I have you. Oh boy. My brain, it could be bad for you. And there's nothing you can do about it. My Vietnamese listeners, help out your examiner. Pronounce the last sound of the word. Okay, this is a biggest problem for Vietnamese in pronunciation. And trust me, your examiner will be so happy if you at least pronounce the whole word. It cuts down on headaches so much.
So Denny, if there's your advice, like if some case, like unfortunately we are the last person in late Friday, and so if what I should do is tell examiner, I know you're tired. I know now you will want to go home, but please focus, because it's really important result for me, this IELTS test, and please go easy on me. Okay, just kidding, but yes, can happen. It's just like the examiners, like I said, it's just we are just a human, right? And sometimes it's lucky or unlucky. It will happen in our life, right? So even in IELTS test, it's also. So yeah, Jenny, I say the last for you. So What do you want to ask Danny? It's your last chance in this live stream.
Yeah, so
Consider
today
it.
we talk a lot about how to choose the good teacher or the good school for you to improve your skill and prepare for IELTS test. We also talk about the emotional and sometimes you do not do like choose a Friday for make the IELTS test, something like that. And the last question for today, Denny, can you tell us what advantages learning IELTS has over learning English in general?
Well, again, to the point that the test helps you for future opportunities, whether it be academic, professional, or personal. Again, and that includes also the TOEFL or the TOEIC. Again, employers might require that you need it. Just remember that it helps to get your foot in the door. But that's all it does. It gives you the opportunity, but then you have to keep up with it. You have to do other things to advance, other things to get better or to continue. So taking a test preparation can be worth the time if it focuses on your needs. If it doesn't focus on your needs, then you're not in the right program. Does that answer your question?
Yes. So Jenny, do you have anything to continue or you clear about the question, the answer of Danny? It's your question.
Yeah. So, oh my God, because I'm coffee shop, so I have something happens now. It make me confused. But I got the idea for Denny, and I and lots of people follow the live stream today. I think we have some tip for us to prepare for us to have maybe a better test in the future.
Yeah, and moreover, I think we have a larger point of view to look at the IELTS or any test like TOEFL or TOEIC with your sharing, Danny, because all of the time that we learn it just from the side of the student, try to get the score. But now it's the really valuable chance to listen from the examiner who can look at us from the other side and give us some many valuable sharing. And I think like I and Jenny and everyone who listened today can take something for us, because I think in our life like communicate in general is important, but sometimes we have to take the test for our goal. We don't know in the future, like we go abroad, we move to another country to live, or we work for foreigner company, even for study. And IELTS or TOEIC or TOEFL is the things necessary that we should prepare for our future. So I really appreciate Danny today for sharing and to spend time with us with many knowledge and many advice and sharing. And I think it's enough for today. Our live stream almost 1 hour and a half. So Danny just says something with our audience listening.
Well, Joy, Jenny, thank you for having me. Again, I cannot emphasize this enough. To remember, whatever your band score may be, whatever score you may get on the TOEIC or the TOEFL, it only represents how well you do on that test on that day with those questions. That's it. That is it. It is not a reflection of your ability or knowledge in general, which might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing.
Yeah.
there's a lot more to your English ability and knowledge than what is in that test. So always remember that. And if you have a bad day, be kind to yourself. As long as you've prepared, as long as you've done everything that you can reasonably do, then okay, you can do it again. Or maybe you should evaluate what your goals are. If you could have done better and you chose not to, all right, learn your lesson and fix whatever problem you had and do better next time.
Yeah, so thank you, Danny. Thanks a lot. And Jenny, you have something you want to tell before we end this live stream? Because today is the first time that you show off in the live stream with everyone, but you do so well. So yeah, just tell something about your feeling or say goodbye with everyone.
Yeah, today, Joy, you have a lot of difficult questions for me.